Well, Fred, it looks like you know the story of Christmas, but there's an element of who Jesus is and what he came to do that you're missing. You know what I think? There's something you need to listen to. And it just so happens we can watch the live stream from Carey Baptist Church's Christmas service here this morning. So why don't we tune in and see what the guy has for us today?
Merry Christmas again. I'm Peter Scott. I serve here as the senior pastor, and it is an absolute joy and privilege to be with you and together at Christmas time. Have you ever noticed how much better you get to know somebody if you step into their shoes? As a family, when we had very small children, we had the opportunity to go and live somewhere else. We went to live in Alaska in the United States. And I had a very busy job, a really all-consuming job. Helen, my wife's job, was to look after our children. And we went when they were 2 years old and 6 months old. And I would come home from a really tough day at work, and Helen would be fried. I think we've got a picture. That is not Helen, but you get the idea. She was just done. And, it was just a little frustrating at times because my job was high-powered and difficult, and she was looking after 2 kids. And I knew the theory. I'd read quite a few books on how to handle children, toddlers, and so we just didn't connect until something changed. And that was that one day I said, look, why don't I look after the kids for a day? And I can't remember if it was a day or overnight, because during that time I did do a couple of day. And you know the cliche. So I found it incredibly different to what I expected. I realised that there was never any break. It was relentless. There was no real rest. I realised that our precious 2-year-old and 6-month-old had not read the manual. They didn't understand the theory about how they were supposed to behave. As I stepped into Helen's shoes, I got this completely different picture of what her life was like. And after that, what started to happen was that because I understood her better, our relationship grew. I wouldn't get home and say, oh, why are you fried? I'd get home and say, I get it. Can I help? There was a shift that happened. Our relationship grew and love grew much more deeply. I wonder if you've ever experienced anything like that. Parents, perhaps, but other things in life as well. Perhaps you've been through a season of grief or loss. And in that season, someone who's been through something similar has walked alongside you. Or maybe it's been something exciting, a new sport or a new skill, something you've been learning, and you found someone who's done that. They're awesome at it. And you start to walk alongside them and they understand. Maybe you've all moved house, moved just a suburb or a city or a country. So I wonder if you've experienced, like I have, that in those times, the relationship just builds a lot more quickly. There's something deeper about the relationship. It grows because someone's walked in your shoes and they walk alongside you. I don't think it's just me or you. If you've experienced that, I suggest it's a human thing. In fact, quite a well-known human thing. And there have been people throughout history who've consciously chosen to step into someone else's shoes. You've probably heard of a guy called Martin Luther King. I think he's a Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. He lived in the US in 1950s and 60s, and he championed civil rights. He grew up in the South, and he championed change in that place. For a group of people who were oppressed, he helped change laws. He met with powerful people. He shifted a nation's conscience. He did such an amazing job that in 1964, Martin Luther King was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. One of the greatest awards, I guess, you could get on planet Earth, the Nobel Peace Prize he was given. He knew the theory of how to look after and change things for an oppressed people. Just recently, I've learned of something that happened after he got that Peace Prize. Martin Luther King Jr. decided to move to Chicago and live in the slums on the west side of Chicago. Why? Well, he'd been in the South and he'd been championing the cause in the South. Now he was moving to the North because he was going to help the people in the north of the United States with similar issues. And he said, Even though he could have chosen to live in the corridors of power, live anywhere, he's now a famous Nobel Peace Prize winner who knows all the theory. He chose to step into the shoes of the people in Chicago so that they might know him and he might know them better. It's Christmas, and I want to suggest to you that at Christmas we celebrate the greatest example of stepping into someone else's shoes in all of history. God stepped into our shoes. I want to read together just a little bit out of the Bible. And often at Christmas we read from 3 of the 4 books that talk about Jesus' life, from Matthew, Mark, or Luke. But this morning I want to read out of John, also the story of Jesus' life, but John starts in a different place. So the words will be up on the screen, but I want to read from John chapter 1 and the first 4 verses. In the beginning, says John, was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing has been made. Nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. Now perhaps you hear that and you go, oh, that is majestic, amazing words. And perhaps you hear that and you go, huh? The Word? What is the Word? Well, the Word is John's expression for God, God the Son, the second person of the Trinity, Jesus. What John's saying here is that Jesus was before all of time. Jesus is God. He existed before anything else was created. And John's telling us too that Jesus was part of creating everything, time, space, this world, whales, guinea pigs, hippopotami, you, me, everything. John then goes on a few verses later, after he's painted this picture of Jesus, who created and was part of creating everything and giving life. He goes on and talks about Jesus coming to the earth. So I'm going to read now from verse 9 through 14. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world, another expression for Jesus. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. And then John summarizes what he's just said in verse 14. He says this, the Word, Jesus, became flesh and made his dwelling among us. God stepped into our shoes. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. Now, just in that sentence, in that verse, there is a universe of truth and ideas and life. It's the verse that I want to focus on this Christmas time. Because it tells us that God stepped into our shoes in this moment of history when we think about this baby Jesus, the nativity scenes in all of the other Gospels. We understand that God chose to step into being not just us, but all of a baby. He grew up, he experienced growing as a boy. He experienced being a teenager. He experienced love and loss, hope, rejection, walking along dusty roads, being in an oppressed minority, living through hot days. I don't know if it was 43 degrees in Palestine at that time, but he lived through hot days. He came and experienced all of the things that we did. And my question is why? Why would God, who created everything, he knew the manual, he'd written the manual, why would he step into our shoes? And the conclusion I can come to is it's because he loved us. He wanted to know us intimately and that we might know him. He wanted relationship with us. He wants relationship with us. And he wants that because he loves us so very much. Now, maybe you're tracking with me, and maybe you're saying, yeah, okay, I get all of that, but hold on. Wasn't Jesus perfect? You say that he experienced everything. He knew what it was to be fully human, but he was perfect. So maybe if he really knew me, because I'm not perfect, maybe if he really knew who I was and what I've done, maybe he wouldn't quite love me. And I'd say part of that logic is correct and part of it I don't think is. The bit that Jesus was perfect, that's true. There's a book in the Bible called Hebrews, and it tells us that Jesus was tempted in every way as you and I are, and yet he didn't do anything wrong. So yes, Jesus was perfect. He didn't experience the act of doing sin in that sense in his life. But the Bible also very clearly tells us that Jesus came to earth, walked the earth for 33 years, and then gave his own life for us in full knowledge of the things that we do wrong. Yes, he knows us fully, and yes, he does love us fully. Have a listen to this in the book of Romans, chapter 5, verses 6 to 8. It tells us this. It says that at just the right time, when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. And then Paul, the person who wrote this, gives us a little bit of commentary. He says, very rarely will anyone die for a righteous person. True. Though for a good person, someone might possibly dare to die. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. It's very clear. Jesus came that we might know him, but also that we might be fully known. He came because he desired intimacy and relationship with us, and because he loved us. You might say he came that we might be fully known because we're fully loved by him.